What's going on, everybody? JT here, coming at you with another episode of Pokemon Go News, and today we're going to be talking about Shadow Pokemon. Now, some of you may be asking yourselves, what exactly is a Shadow Pokemon? Well, basically, a Shadow Pokemon is a Pokemon that's had its heart artificially locked away, which makes it much more dangerous and much more malicious, and because of that, it also makes it a lot more powerful. The Pokemon also had a dark purplish aura surrounding it. Shadow Pokemon were first introduced in Pokemon Colosseum and then its sequel, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, and these games take place in a region called the Ore region, where Team Cypher, the villainous team of that region, is turning Pokemon into Shadow Pokemon, and they're led by a man named Greevil, which is kind of funny because basically it's evil with Gree in front of it. Clever. Now, your job in these games was to find trainers that possess Shadow Pokemon, then capture those Pokemon from those trainers, and once you've done that, you had to use them in battle, walk around with them, do a whole bunch of things just so you could purify these Pokemon, all while fighting Team Cypher and stopping them from doing it again to other Pokemon. Now, let's talk about how Shadow Pokemon are going to be introduced in Pokemon Go. The villainous Team Rocket, or as they're now known as Team Go Rocket because they're in Pokemon Go now, are in possession of these Shadow Pokemon, and they're also stealing items from our Pokestops, as you can see in this screenshot right here. So what you have to do in order to take their Shadow Pokemon away from them is you must battle them in a PvP battle, and once you defeat them, they will leave their Shadow Pokemon behind, which gives you the chance to catch it. We don't currently know exactly how this is going to work, whether you defeat the Go Rocket Grunt and then you get a prompt to encounter the Shadow Pokemon, or maybe it'll be like how a Smeargle photo bombs you, and then once you leave the picture, then it just spawns right next to you. And we don't know if these are guaranteed catches, kind of like a research, or if these things can actually run away from you. Now, thanks to data miners like Trails, we now get to see what Shadow Pokemon are gonna kind of look like in Pokemon Go. And they look exactly the same as normal Pokemon, except for their eyes are bloodshot red, and they have like an angry expression on their face, and they, again, have the dark purple aura surrounding them. And I think they look really cool. I like that they look angry. The angry Magikarp honestly looks pretty funny to me, and it's also one of my favorite Pokemon, so I'm pretty happy to see that as one of the Shadow Pokemon. But we also saw that it looks like shiny Pokemon can also be Shadow Pokemon as well, and you guys know how much I love my shinies, so I can't wait to get out there and try to find some shiny Shadow Pokemon. That's gonna be amazing. The list of what Pokemon can also be Shadow Pokemon has also grown quite a bit, as you can see here, and I was very surprised to see there are some legendaries on there, like Moltres and Zapdos, which would be really cool to run into some wild Shadow legendary Pokemon, because beforehand, it was a small list of Kanto Pokemon, and for some reason Mudkip, and I have no idea why this was just thrown in there like that. Another question that comes up is, how exactly are we going to be purifying these Shadow Pokemon? And I've come up with some ways that this may happen. Maybe battling in raids with them, battling in PvP with them, possibly walking them as your buddy could also be helpful. Maybe different Pokemon have different ways that you purify them, so it's not just one way to do it. And we also don't know exactly, like, the benefits of having a Shadow Pokemon comparatively to a purified Pokemon. Maybe a Shadow Pokemon costs more to power up, but it's stronger because of that. I mean, we still don't know yet. Nothing's official, but yeah, I mean, maybe we might want to keep these Shadow Pokemon. One big thing that a lot of people notice is that a purified Pokemon looks like it may cost 0 Stardust to power up, which might be well worth it for you in order to actually, like, purify your Shadow Pokemon. So it might not be as, like, strong in terms of, like, its attack power, but now it's a free power-up all the way to level 40, which is pretty cool. I mean, especially if you want to get yourself some really powerful teams, maybe it's worth the time to purify these Pokemon instead of just keeping it as a Shadow Pokemon. But again, we don't know if that's how it's going to work until this goes live, so maybe that's true, or maybe that's just wishful thinking, but they do need to do something in order to make it, like, worth it to us to actually, like, purify these things instead of just keeping them as Shadow Pokemon, but who knows what they're going to do. Now, I personally am very excited for Shadow Pokemon making their way into Pokemon Go, because I've wanted stuff like this for the longest time, especially like in the core series games. I wanted to see Shadow Pokemon make their way back. I also wanted to see things like Armored Mewtwo, and we finally got that. And I'm very excited for Shadow Pokemon, because it might mean that my favorite of all Shadow Pokemon might be coming to raids really soon. And that Shadow Pokemon is Shadow Lugia. And as you can tell, this thing looks really good. It was first introduced in Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, and Team Cypher, specifically Greevil, was using it for obviously evil ends, and your goal in that game was to find that Pokemon and capture it and try to purify it, even though it's supposed to be incredibly hard, if not impossible, to do that. But yeah, just imagine if this was in Pokemon Go. It's got a nice dark blackish skin, its belly turned white, its toes got sharp, its its friggin' eye crest's got jagged and white, and its eyes are just blood red. It looks incredible, and I would love to see this. I've always wanted to see this in another game, and hopefully it'll come to the raid system. Also, since they like messed with Armored Mewtwo stats, they might mess with this stats too, and instead of it being more of a defensive Pokemon, this may become an amazing psychic type attacker for our raids. Like, just imagine, like, instead of Mewtwo, it's Shadow Lugia. Like, it sounds pretty cool to me. Another amazing Shadow legendary Pokemon we could run into is Shadow Mewtwo. This thing looks really cool. It was first introduced in Pokken Tournament, the arcade fighter style game, and yeah, it looks just fantastic. I love it. The grayish dark skin, the orange glowing crystal on it, which also kind of glows in his tail, is really neat, and it also has a Mega Evolution. It turns into Mega Mewtwo X, and the crystals get bigger. It just looks menacing, and I would love to see these in the game. Of course, I really see Shadow Mewtwo more than the Mega Evolution, but we may get Mega Evolutions in the future, and just imagine a Shadow Mega Pokemon. God, like, this is getting pretty crazy. Another possibility, though, is that they made a special Shadow legendary Pokemon for Pokemon Go, which isn't out of the realm of possibility because, I mean, we did get Meltan, and personally, I really believe that Meltan was specifically made to promote Pokemon Go and how, like, it could tie into the main series game. So maybe, just maybe, there'll be a special Shadow legendary, like maybe Shadow Rayquaza, which would be just insane. I don't know how I would handle something like that, but just food for thought, really. Obviously, everything I've said is all speculation. We don't know how any of this is going to work until it actually drops. I might be right on the ball about these things, or maybe I'm going to be 100% wrong, but fingers crossed, man. I really want that Shadow Lugia, like, honestly, and I think a lot of you guys want it too, because, I mean, after seeing this thing, just look at it. It's so beautiful. I'm also thinking with this Team Go Rocket Shadow Pokemon event, we might also get some brand new shiny Pokemon, and which better Pokemon would there be besides the classics Meowth, Ekans, and Coughing? Let's start off with the shiny I'm least impressed with, and that's shiny Meowth. It looks okay. It gets a little darker, its feet and tail seem to get a little bit of a pinkish color to it. It looks alright, but when it evolves into shiny Persian, it's pretty disappointing, I'm not gonna lie. It hardly changes at all. I mean, I'm sure in the game you'll be able to tell when you go back and forth in the Pokedex, but, I mean, it just looks maybe slightly lighter. I'm not even sure if it gets lighter or darker, to be fully honest with you, and yeah, I mean, you know, again, I'm happy to get any shinies, but I definitely wish that the Pokemon Company would go just back to some of these shinies and just kind of change them up again. Maybe it doesn't need to seem too different, but I don't know. Maybe just make it black or something. Make it so that it's different, but not, I don't need it to be blue or anything weird like that. My second favorite out of these three Pokemon is shiny Ekans. It turns a nice, you know, lightish green color. It looks pretty good in my opinion. I like green shinies, you know, and it's a pretty solid Pokemon. And when it evolves into shiny Arbok, it gets like a darkish goldish orange color, and the details on its hood are blue. I mean, it's a pretty solid shiny. It's not my favorite by any means, but I'm a decent fan of it. Way more than Persian, for sure. My absolute favorite out of all these three, though, has to be shiny Coughing. It turns a lightish blue color, and I just love the fact that its smoke turns purple, kind of like a poisonous smoke, because he is a poison Pokemon, and it's definitely just a huge change from the original purple, like, body color. It looks great, and I love it. And the fact that it evolves to shiny Weezing, and that Weezing looks exactly the same, is fantastic. I'm so glad they didn't make it so bad, because, like, honestly, like, shiny Shelter's orange looks great. I would have loved it if it stayed that way with Cloyster, but instead it just turns a darker blue. Like, in my opinion, that's kind of like a ruined evolution, for me, personally. But with Coughing and Weezing, it stays perfect, and I just absolutely love it. And if they choose to add these shinies, I'm pretty sure they're going to add them to raids as well. I mean, we already saw Meowth raids at the GoFest 1,000-person raid tests, and adding a Coughing and an Ekans raid seems pretty easy and simple to do. And plus, I'm sure they'll add them to research as well, just to increase your chances of finding a shiny one. And if they do that, you can bet I'm definitely going to go very hard for these, especially that Coughing. Now, currently, we have no idea when this is actually going to go live, but if I had to predict when it's going to go live, I think it's going to go live on Tuesday, July 24th at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, because it's a Tuesday, and that's usually when these events go live, is Tuesdays, and 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is when they decide to roll these things out. So that's when I think it's gonna go live, and I hope it's soon, because, like, it feels like it has to be soon. Like, we've seen it in, like, the, you know, Apple shop. We've seen it being teased, you know, on the Twitter, you know, they've been going back and forth with the actual Pokemon and Pokemon Go companies going back and forth about it, so I'm really feeling it's coming soon, and I just can't wait for it, because it's gonna be a new thing to try out, and I'm just hoping that it turns out to be good, but you never know. And on that note, this is going to be the end of the video. And if you've enjoyed it, and I really hope you have, please smash that like button for me, show me some love, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you know when I upload, and if you'd like to help support the channel even more, there's a link to my Patreon down below. And please let me know in the comments, are you excited for Shadow Pokemon? Do you think we'll get Shadow Lugia or Mewtwo? Please let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next one.